You know what society does to people who are content alone? It punishes them. Not obviously, not with cruelty you can point to, with something far more insidious: concern. Picture this. You declined weekend plans for the third time in a row. You're genuinely content, reading, working on projects, enjoying your own company. The invitations stop coming. When you do see your friends, the conversation shifts. It's careful now, probing. Someone finally says it. "We didn't think you wanted to hang out anymore. You always say no." Your choice to sometimes be alone gets reframed as rejection. The friendship changes. You're no longer an equal. You're someone they're trying to help. Or watch what happens at family gatherings. A man arrives alone for the third holiday in a row. His parents pull him aside. "We're worried about you. You used to bring friends. Are you isolating yourself?" He explains he's content with his small social circle. His sister stages an intervention, suggesting therapy. By the next gathering, relatives speak to him in soft, careful tones like he's fragile. His solitude becomes the family's project to fix. And here's what nobody tells you. The moment you start justifying your need for solitude, you've already lost. Because justification is admission. It's accepting the premise that your solitude is a problem requiring explanation. Think about what happens linguistically when you respond to, "Are you okay?" with reasons why you're choosing to be alone. You're not answering a neutral question. You're mounting a defense against an accusation that was never explicitly made, but was absolutely intended. The question itself presumes guilt. It presumes your behavior is abnormal enough to warrant inquiry, concerning enough to require intervention, suspicious enough to demand explanation. And the moment you provide that explanation, you've validated their premise. You've agreed that yes, this does require justification. Yes, this is unusual enough to need defending. Yes, you understand why they're worried because your behavior is, in fact, worrying. You've stepped into a courtroom where the verdict was decided before you ever opened your mouth, and every word you speak becomes evidence for the prosecution. They've set the trap perfectly. The question, "Are you okay?" isn't really a question. It's an accusation dressed as care. And the moment you answer it seriously, you're playing defense in a game where the rules guarantee your guilt. Here's how the game works. If you say, "I'm fine, I just prefer my own company sometimes," they hear, "I'm in denial about my isolation problem." If you say, "I'm actually really content right now," they hear, the isolation has progressed to the point where they've lost perspective on how abnormal this is. If you say, "I don't need constant social interaction to be happy," they hear, they're so disconnected from normal human needs that they've convinced themselves this is healthy. Every answer you give, no matter how reasonable, gets filtered through their predetermined conclusion that something is wrong with you. The game isn't designed for you to win. It's designed to make you keep playing until you're exhausted enough to just conform. And the most insidious part? They genuinely believe they're helping. They genuinely think this interrogation is an act of love, which makes it nearly impossible to fight back without looking like the unreasonable one. Here's the thing they won't admit. Your refusal to justify your solitude threatens something fundamental in them. Because if you can be genuinely content alone, without apologizing for it, without performing loneliness or explaining it away, you've exposed the exhausting performance they're trapped in. Let me be crystal clear about what I mean by performance. I'm talking about the person who maintains friendships they don't actually enjoy because it's important to have people. The person who accepts every invitation out of obligation, who feels guilty when they want to stay home, who treats their own preference for solitude like a character flaw that needs managing. I'm talking about the elaborate social choreography so many people engage in, the constant texting to prove you're thinking of others, the social media performance to demonstrate you have a rich social life, the anxiety about whether you're being a good enough friend, whether you're reaching out enough, whether people think you care. It's exhausting. And on some level, they know it's exhausting, but they can't stop because they've tied their entire sense of worth to being socially engaged, to being needed, to being connected. So when you show up genuinely at peace with your solitude, not performing loneliness, not apologizing, not even slightly concerned about whether they approve, you're not just making a different choice, you're living proof that everything they're exhausting themselves with might be optional. They need constant social engagement. They derive their worth from being needed, from being included, from the validation that comes from a full social calendar. And they've convinced themselves this isn't just preference, it's health, it's normal, it's what functioning humans do. Listen to how they talk about social connection. It's not, "I enjoy spending time with people," or "I prefer having a busy social life." It's, "Humans are social creatures." It's, "We need connection to survive." It's, "Isolation is dangerous." They've elevated their preference to the level of biological imperative, psychological necessity, moral good. And once you've done that, once you've convinced yourself that your way isn't just your way, but the only healthy way, then anyone who lives differently becomes a problem to solve. This is where it gets really dark, because they're not just worried about you, they're worried about what your existence means for their worldview. If you can be genuinely happy with minimal social contact, then maybe all the friendships they're maintaining out of obligation aren't actually necessary. Maybe the guilt they feel when they want to stay home isn't healthy intuition, but trained compliance. Maybe the anxiety about being a good enough friend isn't care, but control. Your peaceful solitude asks questions they don't want to answer. So instead of examining their own exhaustion, they pathologize your peace. So when you exist peacefully outside that framework, you become a problem. Not because you're doing anything to them, but because your peace reveals their captivity. Your contentment in solitude exposes the desperation in their constant connection. Think about what happens when someone discovers you spent the entire weekend alone and enjoyed it. Watch their face. There's a moment, brief but unmistakable, where you can see the cognitive dissonance, because they just spent the weekend forcing themselves through social obligations they didn't want, managing friendships that drained them, performing enthusiasm they didn't feel, and they're exhausted. And here you are, peaceful and rested, having done none of that. For a split second, they have to confront the possibility that you've figured out something they haven't. That you've found peace in a place they've been taught to fear, that you're free in a way they've never allowed themselves to be. And that moment is intolerable. So they resolve the cognitive dissonance the only way they can, by deciding you must be broken. Your peace can't be real peace. Your contentment can't be genuine contentment. Because if it is, then what have they been doing? What have they been sacrificing? What have they been afraid of? It's easier to pathologize you than to examine their own captivity. It's easier to frame you as the problem than to admit they might be trapped. Psychologists call this social homeostasis. It's the invisible pressure groups exert to maintain their emotional equilibrium, and anyone who disrupts that equilibrium by being genuinely okay without the group gets corrected. The correction looks like concern. It functions like enforcement. Here's how it works on a systemic level. Every social group has an unspoken emotional baseline, a collective agreement about what's normal, what's acceptable, what's cause for concern. These agreements are rarely conscious and never explicitly stated, but they're powerfully enforced. In some groups, the baseline is, everyone needs regular social contact to be healthy. In others, it's, choosing to be alone means something is wrong. In others, it's, if you're not actively maintaining these relationships, you don't care about us. These baselines create an emotional equilibrium that the group depends on for its sense of stability and normalcy. When you violate that equilibrium by being content outside of it, the group experiences your contentment as destabilization. Not because you're doing anything to them, but because your existence challenges the foundational assumptions they've built their identity on. So the group corrects you. They bring you back into line. They do it with concern, with care, with "we're just worried about you," because that's the socially acceptable way to enforce compliance. But make no mistake, it is enforcement. It is social control. It is punishment for deviation dressed up in the language of love. Watch what actually happens when you justify your solitude. You say, "I'm just introverted." They hear, "I have a condition that explains my abnormal behavior." You say, "I'm recharging." They hear, "I'm temporarily broken and will return to normal soon." Every single justification you offer gets run through their filter of "something is wrong here" and comes out as confirmation of their concern. You say you need alone time for your mental health. They hear, "You're struggling with your mental health and isolation is a symptom." You say you're working on personal projects. They hear, "You're using productivity as an excuse to avoid people." You say you're perfectly happy. They hear, "You're in denial about how isolated you've become." There is no combination of words you can arrange that will be heard as, "I am a healthy person making a healthy choice," because they didn't come to you with an open question, they came to you with a conclusion, and they're looking for you to either admit it or provide evidence for it. This is the linguistic trap of justification. The act of justifying inherently accepts the framework that justification is required. It accepts that your behavior is unusual enough, concerning enough, abnormal enough to warrant explanation. And once you're in that framework, you can't win. Every explanation becomes a symptom. Every defense becomes evidence. Every assertion of your contentment becomes proof of your denial. Every justification you offer gets cataloged as evidence of the problem they already decided you have. Not because they're malicious, because they cannot psychologically afford to accept that you're genuinely okay. Your okayness is too threatening. Let me tell you exactly why they can't afford to accept it. If you're genuinely okay, not just saying you're okay, not pretending to be okay, but actually authentically at peace with your solitude, then several things become true that they cannot tolerate. First, their model of human psychology is wrong. They've built their entire understanding of well-being on the idea that humans need regular social contact to be healthy. Your genuine contentment in solitude breaks that model. Second, their sacrifices might have been unnecessary. All the social obligations they've forced themselves through, all the friendships they've maintained out of duty, all the guilt they've felt about wanting to be alone, maybe none of that was required. Maybe they've been imprisoning themselves. Third, their concern isn't really about you. If they accept that you're genuinely okay, then they have to confront the fact that their concern says more about their own anxiety than your actual well-being. That their interrogation of you is really about managing their own discomfort. That their insistence on fixing you is really about maintaining their own worldview. These realizations are psychologically destabilizing, so they reject them. They reject your okayness. Not consciously, not with awareness, but completely. Your genuine contentment cannot be allowed to exist because its existence destabilizes everything they've built their life on. Here's where it gets darker. The concern escalates. If gentle questioning doesn't bring you back in line, they upgrade their tactics. The invitations stop entirely. "We didn't want to pressure you." The family starts talking about you when you're not there. "We're really worried." Watch how the enforcement escalates in phases. Phase 1 is the gentle inquiry we've already discussed. "Are you okay? We're worried about you." This is testing the waters, seeing if soft pressure will bring you back into compliance. When that doesn't work, they move to Phase 2, strategic exclusion framed as consideration. They stop inviting you to things, but they frame it as respecting your needs. "We didn't think you'd want to come. We know you like your alone time." It sounds considerate, It functions as punishment. You're being isolated from the group as consequence for choosing isolation, and they get to feel virtuous about it. Phase 3 is where it gets truly insidious. They start talking about you in your absence, building consensus around the idea that something is wrong with you. Have you noticed how isolated they've been? I'm really concerned. Do you think we should say something? They're building a case, creating a unified front, generating social proof that their concern is legitimate and your choice is pathological. By the time they circle back to you with their collective worry, it's not one person's opinion anymore. It's the group consensus. And how do you fight the group consensus? You can't. That's the point. Your boundaries become symptoms. Your privacy becomes secrecy. Your contentment becomes denial. They've built an entire linguistic framework that transforms every aspect of healthy solitude into pathology. And the more you explain, the more evidence you provide for their diagnosis. This is the most sophisticated aspect of the social control system, the linguistic trap where healthy behaviors get relabeled as symptoms. You set a boundary about how often you're available for social contact. They call it putting up walls. You maintain privacy about your inner life. They call it being closed off or secretive. You express genuine contentment in your solitude. They call it rationalizing your isolation or being in denial. Every single behavior that represents healthy autonomy, clear boundaries, or genuine self-knowledge gets run through their pathologizing filter and emerges as evidence of dysfunction. And here's the trap. You can't fight the relabeling without sounding defensive, and you can't ignore it without being accused of denial. If you say, "These aren't walls, these are healthy boundaries," they hear, they've rationalized their dysfunction so thoroughly they think it's healthy. If you say, "I'm not being secretive, I'm just private," they hear, they can't even see how closed off they've become. If you say, "I'm not in denial, I'm genuinely content," they hear, the denial has progressed to the point where they actually believe it. The linguistic framework is airtight. Every avenue of defense has been preemptively labeled as a symptom. You literally cannot escape the diagnosis once you're caught in this system. Let me tell you what's actually happening here. This isn't about your well-being. It's about control. Society has built massive structures around the idea that humans need constant social engagement to be healthy. Multi-billion-dollar industries depend on this narrative. Social media, entertainment, therapy culture, self-help. Your peaceful solitude threatens their entire business model. Anyone who contradicts this narrative by being alone and genuinely okay becomes dangerous. You're not just choosing differently, you're living proof that the entire system might be optional. That's not something they can let exist unchallenged. Studies consistently show that people who choose solitude report equal or higher life satisfaction than those with extensive social networks, that people with strong internal resources experience less anxiety, less depression, less existential despair. But you'll never hear this because it undermines everything. So if you're someone who declines the weekend plans, who shows up alone to family gatherings, who finds genuine peace in your own company, know this: they will keep trying to fix you. The concern will continue. The pathologizing won't stop. But here's the truth they can't touch. Your solitude isn't pathology. It's freedom, and freedom always threatens systems built on everyone's captivity. Stop justifying it. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Let them be uncomfortable with your peace, because their discomfort is not your emergency, and their inability to understand your contentment doesn't make your contentment less real. Stay free, not because it's easy, The punishment is real and ongoing. Stay free because you've discovered something they're desperately trying to make you forget, that you don't need their permission to be genuinely okay alone.